Hey there, humans, and welcome to an American-sized special 4th of July edition of News for Human Use, your oasis of truth in the digital desert of deceit that dominates the internet. I'm Gene Pocket. I'm a some-selling author, a public speaker, and the only candidate running for President of the United States of America in the year 2020 who cares more about you as a person than I care about you as a voter. To Gene Pocket and the Human Party, you're more than a demographic or a geographic location. You're a unique individual with a unique set of hopes and fears and interests and idiosyncrasies that make you one of a kind, distinctly beautiful. I want to wish every one of my human friends out there a happy Independence Day, and I hope you're spending the holiday with your loved ones and reveling in the freedom that is the defining feature of the United States of America. It was on this day, exactly 243 years ago, that the Declaration of Independence was adopted by the Continental Congress in the Pennsylvania State House in Philadelphia. The original draft was written by Thomas Jefferson. The Continental Congress debated the document for weeks, editing and revising it with input from some of the greatest political minds of the time, from Ben Franklin to John Adams. Finally, on July the 4th, in the year 1776, they arrived at an agreement and adopted the revised document as a formal Declaration of Independence, creating the greatest nation this planet has ever known, a beacon of hope for freedom and human individuality. Now, I want to read you the first couple paragraphs of this amazing document because I think it's important that every American hears these words. But before I start, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer before I get going. The original document made use of the words man or mankind several times, and I think we're past that kind of limiting language. As the framers intended, we've grown and adapted. So I've taken the liberty of updating the language for modern audiences to more accurately reflect the spirit and sentiments contained. I don't think Jefferson would mind. If he can edit the Bible, I can edit the Declaration of Independence. Anyways, here goes. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of humankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all humans are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among humanity, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience has shown that humans are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses, usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it's their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Wow, not only do these words still have relevance to us today, 243 years later, but I want you to take note of what our nation was founded on. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people, all humans are created equal, endowed with inalienable rights, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and life. And when the United States Constitution was ratified 12 years later, it began with those three simple and beautiful words, you all know them: we the people. From its founding, the United States of America has derived its strength from its people by recognizing that each and every one of us, all of my human brothers and sisters out there, are unique individuals endowed with the right to life and happiness. Nowhere in any of the founding documents are you going to find the wording that recognizes rights for bots, machines, or artificial intelligences. You're not going to find any of the founders saying that people should have their free speech policed by algorithms. There's no foundational document that prescribes liberty for robots. But here we are, 243 years later. The founding fathers, they've been recast as villains, and increasing numbers of people, of humans, have been cast aside in favor of bots, machines, and artificial intelligences. Our elected officials have been bought by the big tech companies, happy to take their 30 pieces of silver just so that they can get reelected. These greedy politicians, they turn a blind eye, while these tech oligarchs do everything they can to give control of our lives over to the machines. They tell us that bots, machines, and artificial intelligence, they tell us that they're going to make our lives easier, while stripping away our dignity by giving these synthetic creatures more and more control. Our speech is policed by algorithms. Our news is curated by artificial intelligences. Even access to our homes is monitored by cameras connected to smart devices. We, the people, we've been reduced to second-class citizens, treated like children, incapable of taking care of ourselves. With each aspect of our lives that we allow the machines to control, we become more reliant. Our phones become external hard drives to our brains. Knowledge, the key ingredient to wisdom, is traded in for convenience. So-called social media filters human relationships through algorithms that wrap us in comforting digital bubbles, making the real-world interaction seem stressful and genuine connection increasingly difficult. Discipline, the path that has been traveled by artists throughout human history, that road from talent to genius, is neglected in favor of software to auto-tune our precious speech, or computer models that inhibit the ability to capture dreams. In short, in 243 years, we've gone from a bold declaration of independence to a completely demoralized dependence on bots, machines, and artificial intelligences. And despite the real story being that our human dignity has been stripped away by these bots, machines, and artificial intelligences, the big controversy of Independence Day this year has been Robot Don's ridiculous military parade in the streets of Washington, D.C. Now, criticism of the parade has come from all sides. Some people say it smacks of authoritarianism. Others have slammed Robot Don for the cost and the fact that his parade is diverting $2.5 million that was intended to improve national parks. Still others are saying that the computer-in-chief is trying to make himself look strong at the expense of the honor of the United States military. Now, obviously, I'm not going to dispute any of these criticisms because they're all valid points, but they all miss the real truth about Robot Don's 4th of July military parade. And the real truth is that it's a lie. Another giant whopper told by the world's most famous liar. The parade consists of planes flying overhead and tanks rolling down the streets of the national capital and troops marching along. But this is all an elaborate fiction. That's not what our military looks like anymore. Robot Don may as well have ordered cannons rolled down the street, or cavalry mounted on horseback trotting along, or clipper ships to sail down the Potomac. The truth is that our military has been transformed over the last few decades. It would be more accurate to have unmanned drones buzz by overhead, or giant computer servers mounted on wheels and dragged along on display. In 2019, in the United States military, humans are just there to tend to the machines. Now, sadly, the twisted dream of replacing humans with machines in the military arena has been around for millennia. As early as 400 BC, we find mention of an automaton, a robot called Talos. It's built by Hephaestus, the disfigured blacksmith to the gods, at the request of Zeus to protect Europa, one of Zeus's many mistresses, who also happens to be his great-great-granddaughter. Anyway, the ancient robot is thankfully destroyed by Jason and his band of Argonauts on their journey of anarchy through the ancient world. The creature is mourned by no one. But the dream of unmanned killing machines, however, has persisted, kept alive by the warped minds of military leaders throughout history. In 1849, the Austrians used unmanned balloons with timed explosives to bomb Venice. In 1898, Nikola Tesla dazzled audiences in New York with his remotely controlled boat. Now, probably the most famous example of robots used in military history is what's known as a Goliath tracked mine, a technology developed by, well, just watch the clip.
Der Goliath, eine neuartige Waffe gegen Panzer und Bunker. Der fernzusteuernde Zwergpanzer wird für den Einsatz vorbereitet. Von einem Pionier geleitet, setzt sich das Fahrzeug in Bewegung. Der Goliath wird in Stellung gebracht. Als Angriffsziel dient bei dieser Übung ein erbeuteter, schwerer feindlicher Kampfwagen. Der Gruppenführer gibt den Einsatzbefehl. Goliath wird dem Feind zum Angriff entgegengeschickt. Goliath geht auf den Riesen los. Die Ladung des ferngezündeten Goliath jagt den Stahlkoloss in die Luft.
But it's in the last 20 years, the years since Y2K, that this monstrous dream of unmanned killing machines has crept out of the Nazi imagination and into American reality. While the United States has used unmanned drones for surveillance for decades, it's only in the last 20 years that they had the capacity and the will to use them in the taking of human life. It all started with September 11th, 2001, less than 2 years after the catastrophic events of Y2K. On September 14th, 2001, the 107th Congress passed the Authorization for Use of Military Force Against Terrorists Act, almost unanimously. This thing got a yay vote from literally almost every congressperson, from Republicans like Mike Pence, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and Jeff Sessions, to Democrats and current resistance heroes like Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, Xavier Becerra, Nancy Pelosi, and Bernie Sanders. There was only one dissenting vote from human hero, California Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She cautioned her colleagues from the floor of the United States House of Representatives.
As we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
A few days later, she further explained her no vote in an op-ed. Quote, "It was a blank check to the president to attack anyone involved in the September 11th events, anywhere, in any country, without regard to our nation's long-term foreign policy, economic, and national security interests, and without a time limit. In granting these overly broad powers, the Congress failed its responsibility to understand the dimensions of its declaration. I could not support such a grant of war-making authority to the president. I believe it would put more innocent lives at risk," end quote. The woman is a prophet. Now anyway, for the Bush administration, along with military and so-called intelligence leaders, Al-Qaeda provided a convenient scapegoat for the work of rogue autopilots, and as predicted by Barbara Lee, the United States government used the crisis to subvert the humanity of the entire nation, to become the evil that it feared. They used the authorization for use of military force against terrorist acts to justify endless war around the world with almost no accountability and little to no oversight. They used the near unanimous vote of the 107th Congress to realize their dreams of unmanned killing machines. Here's how Wired magazine put it in 2005, quote, "Attitudes began to change about drones in 2001 when the CIA and the Air Force rigged a few Predator drones with Hellfire air-to-ground missiles. Suddenly a drone could do more than just float over a target for 20 hours at a time watching and taking pictures. Already a significant asset. It could also be a killer," end quote. Now the article goes on to explain the advantages for military brass by shortening what they call the kill chain. Quote, "The whole thing, from legal decision to command to execution, takes 5 minutes. Tacticians call that timeline: target acquisition, deployment of force, order to attack, destruction of target, the sensor to shooter cycle, or kill chain. It's a measure of any military's reflexes. In Gulf War I, the kill chain was often 3 days. It could still take days for satellite pictures to be captured, scoured by imagery analysts, forwarded through the military hierarchy, and passed on to someone with a gun. But that's changing. With an armed drone, the sensor is the shooter. The kill chain is only 1 link long," end quote. So one of the advantages of these flying killer robots, according to military leaders, is that they get to spend less time thinking about the taking of a human life, less time taking the time to get it right. George W. Bush authorized the assassination of hundreds of people by these unmanned machines during his time in office, and there were millions of people who were qualified to remotely control these machines without even knowing it. They'd been being trained for decades. Here's how Wired magazine put it, quote, "Joel Clark had never considered becoming a pilot, but the idea of running a robot spy plane sounded pretty rad. In a sense, Clark had been prepping for the job since he was a kid. He plays video games, a lot of video games. Back in the barracks, he spends downtime with an Xbox and a PlayStation. When he first slid behind the controls of a Shadow UAV, the point-and-click operation turned out to work pretty much the same way. You watch the screen, tell it to roll left, it rolls left. It's pretty simple," Clark says, end quote. And they try to tell us that video games don't lead to violence. Give me a break. Now, drone killings really ramped up when Peace Prize Obama took office and took over the reins of the drone army. As one headline said of the Nobel Peace Prize winner, if Obama apologized for one civilian drone victim every day, it would take him 3 years. According to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, quote, there were 10 times more airstrikes in the covert war on terror during President Obama's presidency than under his predecessor, George W. Bush. Obama embraced the drone program, overseeing more strikes in his first year than Bush carried out during his entire presidency. A total of 563 strikes, largely by drones, targeted Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen during Obama's 2 terms, compared to just 57 strikes under Bush. Between 384 and 807 civilians were killed in those countries, according to reports logged by the Bureau, end quote. Now, besides using the authorization for use of military force against terrorist acts as a justification for the embrace of military robots, Obama administration officials praised drones as being precise.
As a general proposition, the question that was posed, I want to make sure that people understand actually drones have not caused a huge number of civilian casualties. For the most part, they have been very precise precision strikes against Al-Qaeda and their affiliates. And we are very careful in terms of how it's been applied.
These platforms have been able to use that great intelligence capability, marry it then with the kinetic capability, so it's called find, fix, and finish, that the U.S. government, and these are platforms that have been integrated into the U.S. military for quite some time. And it has such precision, and they have laser-guided weapons that allow those remote pilots to be able to target the individual or the location with tremendous precision.
The administration regularly made claims that the number of civilians killed in drone strikes were in the single digits. But it's pretty easy to believe your strikes are precise and your casualties are low when, according to the New York Times, quote, Obama embraced a disputed method for counting civilian casualties that did little to box them in. It in effect counts all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants, according to several administration officials, unless there is explicit intelligence posthumously proving them innocent, end quote. Did you get that? If you're a military-age male in what the United States government decides is the wrong place, Obama figured that was enough justification to have you murdered by a flying robot. But let's put a human face on this. I don't want to just talk about this in the abstract. I want you to know the real results such indiscriminate policies can have, because it doesn't matter how precise your weapon is if you're indiscriminate with your targets. This is Anwar al-Awlaki. He was born in New Mexico. He got a bachelor's degree at Colorado State University. He was also educated at San Diego State University. Soon after 9/11, police found his phone number in the apartment of the man authorities said to be the 20th hijacker in the 9/11 attacks. Al-Awlaki was put on a list of suspected terrorists. Over the next 10 years, he had some very dodgy connections to terrorists, including the Fort Hood shooter and the so-called underwear bomber. Al-Awlaki was accused of being a recruiter for Al-Qaeda. No evidence was ever presented to bolster the claim, but thanks to the authorization for use of military force against terrorist acts, innocent before proven guilty doesn't really apply anymore. But for the sake of argument, let's just say the government's got it right for once, that this guy's up to no good, stirring up trouble with his writings and speeches and finding recruits for this terrorist organization. He's an American citizen entitled to due process, right? Not in the eyes of the United States government. In April of 2010, Al-Awlaki was placed on the CIA kill list by Obama due to his alleged terrorist activities. By September 2011, he was dead, killed by 2 Predator drones firing Hellfire missiles. An American citizen was killed by a flying robot with the shaky legal justification that was made legal by the authorization of use of military force against terrorist act. Even the New York Times editorial board questioned the legality of the strike. Now maybe you're out there, you're saying, Gene, who cares? This guy was a terrorist and he got what he had coming to him. And I say to you that this story is not about Anwar al-Awlaki. This is Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, the son of Anwar al-Awlaki. He was born in Denver, Colorado. He's a high school student with no ties to terrorism other than being the son of a suspected terrorist. On October 14, 2011, just 2 weeks after his father was killed by a Predator drone, and less than 2 months after Abdul Rahman's 16th birthday, Abdul Rahman was killed while eating dinner at an outdoor restaurant in Yemen. by a drone airstrike ordered by Peace Prize Obama. He was a boy, a kid, an American kid, killed for, as one American official put it, being, quote, in the wrong place at the wrong time. The United States government did not know that Mr. al-Awlaki's son was there before the airstrike was ordered, end quote. Real precise, huh? And as if to make matters worse, watch what Peace Prize Obama's press secretary, Robot Gibbs, had to say about it.
It's an American citizen that's being targeted without due process of law, without trial, and he's underage, he's a minor.
I would suggest that you should have a far more responsible father if they're truly concerned about the well-being of their children. I don't think becoming an al-Qaeda jihadist terrorist is the best way to go about doing your business.
That is despicable. It's absolutely monstrous. Explain to me how a kid is responsible for the crimes of his father. Explain how killing an innocent American teenager is keeping us safe, because it's not. In fact, according to the New York Times, Anwar al-Awlaki's public statements and videos have been far more influential in inspiring acts of terrorism in the wake of his killing than before his death. And just in case you didn't think this story could get any worse, al-Awlaki's 8-year-old daughter was killed in a raid ordered by Robot Don just 1 week after he took office, in a failed attempt to kill some al-Qaeda leader. At least it was a raid conducted by human soldiers and not robots for once. But make no mistake, Robot Don has only escalated the United States military reliance on killer robots. Like Peace Prize Obama, Robot Don seems determined to massively outdo the numbers of people killed by his predecessor. But rather than releasing doctored numbers about how many people, civilians or otherwise, have been killed by these mechanical murderers, Trump has decided to stop releasing numbers at all. So a secretive killing program that was barely accountable to anyone before is now accountable to no one. And these machines are now allowed to kill with impunity. These machines brought the United States of America to the brink of international war just 2 weeks ago, when the Iranian government shot down one of these flying killer robots that they claimed was invading their airspace. In retaliation, Robot Don ordered an airstrike on Iran. The planes were in the air when the order was reversed for unknown reasons. If the strike had taken place, it would have almost certainly dragged the United States of America into yet another war in the Middle East over the destruction of a robot. Think about that. Robot Don shook hands with the leader of North Korea after the murder of an American student. But the destruction of an American robot is enough to drive him to the brink of war. It's disgusting. It's so gross. And just because Robot Don stopped airstrikes at the last minute, don't think it doesn't mean that the United States of America is not about to go to war with Iran. Mike Pompeo, Robot Don's Secretary of State, has said that there are ties between Iran and al-Qaeda. He says such a relationship would provide the foundation for military action against Iran under the 2001 Congressional Authorization for Use of Military Force Against Terrorists Act. Thanks, Bernie Sanders. Thanks, Hillary Clinton. Thanks, Mike Pence. Thanks, Nancy Pelosi. Thanks, Chuck Schumer, and all you unthinking members of the 107th Congress. You all played a major role in bringing us to endless war fought by robots around the globe. You've helped the United States to become the evil that we feared. And while I've spent a lot of time today talking about drones, these flying killer robots, that's nothing compared with what's to come. Remember those big tech companies I told you about who bought all our politicians? They've decided to get involved in automating warfare, helping to build systems that will lead us to what military and tech experts call algorithmic warfare. For example, as quoted at fastcompany.com, quote, take YouTube's exquisitely effective video recommendation sidebar, which can predict that a viewer who searches for a video of a Huey helicopter will probably also be interested in a video about a nuclear submarine or a clip from Apocalypse Now. He uses a predictive technique known as cluster analysis that can similarly be used to predict that a man walking around aimlessly may be preparing an attack. End quote. The kill chain has been shortened to one link, and big tech wants to remove the one human component, the person pulling the trigger, and give that job to an algorithm? Jeff Bezos has spent the last couple years trying to get a contract with the Department of Defense that would marry Amazon's cloud services with military applications. At the same time, the Department of Defense has been dreaming for years of ways they can weaponize big data and leverage information from social media and other places around the internet to identify potential targets. These final two paragraphs of an opinion piece written by journalist Ben Tarnoff in The Guardian sum up exactly where we're headed. And I quote, The problem isn't the quality of the tools, but the institution wielding them. And AI will only make that institution more brutal. The forever war demands that the United States of America sees enemies everywhere. AI promises to find those enemies faster, even if all it takes to be considered an enemy is exhibiting a pattern of behavior that a classified machine learning model associates with hostile activity. Call it death by big data. AI also has the potential to make the forever war more permanent by giving some of the country's largest companies a stake in perpetuating it. Silicon Valley has always had close links to the United States military, but algorithmic warfare will bring big tech deeper into the military-industrial complex and give billionaires like Jeff Bezos a powerful incentive to ensure the forever war lasts forever. Enemies will be found, money will be made, end quote. Robot Don is helping to fuel the forever war fought by bots, machines, and artificial intelligences because he loves money more than he loves people. He's helping by perpetuating the lie that we haven't turned over control of our military to the machines. He's helping by having this ridiculous military parade of obsolete weapons of war. It's a distraction to keep you from noticing that we have become completely dependent on bots, machines, and artificial intelligences for our safety. Our independence has been sold, and every machine we empower with authority over our lives brings each and every one of us that much closer to a violent death at the hands of these menacing, murdering creatures. Our elected officials may not be doing anything to stop it. Our news media may not be calling it what it is, but Gene Pocket and the Human Party are saying enough is enough. Right here and right now, July 4th, 2019, we're declaring our independence from bots, machines, and artificial intelligence. We won't be abused and usurped by these synthetic creatures any longer. We're casting off the shackles of digital dependence and returning to our roots. We the people. Visit www.genepocket.org, that's GENEpocket.org, to find out how you can help us in our fight. We have to come together, united under the banner of the Human Party, working together to gain our independence. And to help in that fight, I'm going to be here every Thursday bringing you news and information that's fit for human use. Tell the people you care about this video. Tell them the fight for independence has just begun. Don't just share the link. Tell them face to face. Look into their eyes and tell them the truth. And be sure to visit www.genepocket.org. That's GENEpocket.org, where you're going to find all kinds of information about my presidential campaign, the Human Party, how you can volunteer, and most importantly, that link to our donation page. Donate today if you agree that we need to keep America human. Hit subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. I'm Gene Pocket, and until next week, I wish good things for you, good things for the United States of America, and all the best to the human race. Thanks, and have a happy 4th. See you next week.
We're not gonna let them take our jobs. We're not gonna be replaced. We won't live in a world that's run by bots. We won't let them take our place. We won't let machines take our rights. We'll stay together, we will fight. We're not gonna let them program our kids. We won't let bots control our news. We won't let machines
military base.
What type of things is the military base?
People, army tanks, and helicopters.
Oh. How many points do you get for blowing up people?
1,000.